Have you ever had a moment so unexpected, so completely out of the blue, that your entire body just freezes? That's exactly what happened to Mark Reynolds one sunny Saturday afternoon. If you're enjoying this incredible true story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that will leave you speechless. Mark stared in disbelief as Catherine Chen, the same woman who critiqued his quarterly reports and led stern-faced board meetings, casually lowered herself onto his lap on the park bench. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers, splashing across the concrete as his mind raced to make sense of what was happening. This was his boss. His intimidating, brilliant, untouchable boss who had never so much as called him by his first name in the 3 years he'd worked at Horizon Technologies. "I'm sorry," Catherine whispered, her voice trembling in a way he'd never heard before. "I thought you were someone else." But Mark knew there was more to this story. Much more. 6 months earlier, Mark's life had been completely different. He had been happily married to Elena, his college sweetheart, raising their 5-year-old daughter Lily in a modest but comfortable suburban home. He had a stable job as a mid-level marketing analyst at Horizon Technologies, and while he wasn't setting the world on fire with his career, he was content. The future stretched before him like a well-mapped road. Then came the accident. A rainy night, a truck driver who'd fallen asleep at the wheel, and in an instant, Elena was gone. Mark found himself a widower at 34, solely responsible for a heartbroken little girl who couldn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home. The first few weeks passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, well-meaning casseroles from neighbors, and nights spent holding Lily as she cried herself to sleep. Mark moved through his days like a ghost, going through the motions at work, barely keeping it together. His performance slipped. Reports were late. Presentations lacked their usual polish. He knew he was on thin ice, but he couldn't seem to find his footing. That's when Catherine Chen, the newly appointed CEO of Horizon Technologies, called him into her office. Mark had only seen her from afar before, a formidable presence in tailored suits who had risen through the ranks with remarkable speed. At 40, she was the youngest CEO in the company's history and had a reputation for being brilliant but merciless when it came to underperformance. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, not looking up from his file as he entered her immaculate office. "Your numbers have been concerning for the past quarter." Mark stood there, his tie feeling suddenly too tight. "Yes, Ms. Chen. I'm aware. Are you also aware that under normal circumstances, this would be grounds for termination?" She finally looked up, her dark eyes unreadable. "I am," Mark said, feeling a cold sweat break out across his back. He couldn't lose this job. Not now. Not with Lily depending on him. Catherine studied him for a long moment. "I understand you've experienced a personal loss recently." The clinical way she referred to Elena's death made his chest tighten, but he nodded. "My wife. 3 months ago." Something flickered across Catherine's face, so quickly he almost missed it. "You have a child?" "A daughter. She's 5. Catherine tapped her pen against the desk, then made a decision. "I'm not going to fire you, Mr. Reynolds. But I am going to move you to a different department where your current limitations might be less of a liability. You'll report directly to me for the next 6 months. If your performance improves, we'll reassess." It wasn't charity, the new position came with longer hours and more demanding projects, but it was a lifeline. Mark took it gratefully. The following months were a grueling balancing act. Mark hired a babysitter for Lily, worked late into the evenings after putting her to bed, and tried desperately to meet Catherine's exacting standards. She was a demanding boss, sending his work back multiple times with terse notes for improvement, scheduling early morning meetings that forced him to rearrange his childcare, and setting deadlines that seemed impossible to meet. But slowly, something unexpected began to happen. Mark found that the intense focus required by his new role gave him less time to dwell on his grief. The challenging projects engaged his mind in ways his previous position hadn't. And Catherine, for all her demanding nature, was also fair. When he delivered good work, she acknowledged it. When he needed to leave early for Lily's kindergarten graduation, she didn't make him feel guilty. One evening, after everyone else had left the office, Catherine stopped by his desk where he was still working on a presentation. "It's nearly 9, Reynolds," she said, her heels clicking on the polished floor as she approached. "Don't you have a daughter to get home to?" Mark rubbed his tired eyes. "The babysitter's staying late. I need to finish this for tomorrow." Catherine leaned against his desk, arms crossed. For once, she looked less like an intimidating CEO and more like a concerned human being. "How is your daughter handling everything?" The unexpected question caught him off guard. "She has good days and bad days. Mostly she's confused. Angry sometimes. She doesn't understand why her mom isn't coming back." Catherine nodded slowly. "Children are resilient, but they need stability. Go home, Reynolds. The presentation can wait until morning." As weeks turned into months, these small moments of humanity from Catherine became more frequent. She began asking about Lily occasionally. Once, when Mark had to miss work because Lily was sick, Catherine sent a care package to his house with children's books, soup, and cold medicine. Mark couldn't figure her out. In meetings, she was still the same demanding, sometimes intimidating boss. But these glimpses of compassion suggested there was more beneath the surface. Spring arrived, bringing with it Lily's 6th birthday. Mark planned a small party at the local park, inviting her classmates and a few neighbors who had been supportive after Elena's death. The morning of the party, as he was setting up decorations at the park pavilion, his phone rang. It was Catherine. "Reynolds, I need the Miller proposal on my desk by noon." Mark's heart sank. "Ms. Chen, it's Saturday. And it's my daughter's birthday party." There was a pause on the other end. "I see. When will you be back in the office?" "Monday morning," he said, trying to keep the frustration from his voice. "Fine. Monday then." She hung up without another word. Mark put his phone away, disappointed but not surprised. Catherine Chen was still his boss, after all. Her moments of kindness didn't change the fundamental nature of their relationship. The party was a success, despite Lily's momentary sadness when she blew out her candles and whispered that she had wished for her mommy to come back. Mark held it together, helping her open presents and serving cake to the excited children. As the party wound down and parents began collecting their children, Mark sat alone on a bench, watching Lily play with her new friends on the playground. That's when he felt someone sit down beside him. "She looks happy," Catherine said quietly. Mark turned in shock. Catherine Chen was sitting next to him, dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a simple blouse, so different from her usual corporate attire that he almost didn't recognize her. "Ms. Chen? What are you doing here?" She handed him a wrapped package. "I thought your daughter might like this. My niece is about her age, and this was her favorite book last year." Mark took the gift, completely bewildered. "Thank you, but how did you know where we'd be?" Catherine looked uncomfortable. "You mentioned the park name when I called. I was in the area, so." She trailed off, clearly not used to explaining herself. Before Mark could respond, Lily came running over. "Daddy! Who's this lady?" Mark introduced them, still trying to process the situation. "Lily, this is Ms. Chen. She's my boss from work." Lily studied Catherine with the direct curiosity only children possess. "Do you make my daddy work too hard? He stays up really late sometimes." Catherine actually smiled, a real smile that transformed her usually serious face. "Sometimes I do. I'll try to be better about that." Lily nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Want to see me go down the big slide? Daddy says I'm brave enough now." To Mark's further astonishment, Catherine agreed, following Lily to the playground while Mark watched in disbelief. For 20 minutes, his intimidating boss pushed his daughter on the swings and applauded her slide adventures. The night air carried a chill that matched the emptiness in Sarah's heart as she stood in her doorway, staring at Michael's hesitant face. Just 12 hours earlier, she had watched her husband's casket lower into the ground. Now, with her children finally asleep upstairs, she found herself uttering words she never imagined would cross her lips so soon. Please don't go. I can't be alone tonight. If you're feeling that pull to know what happens next, you're not alone. Life's most powerful stories often begin at our lowest moments. If this resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the complicated, beautiful mess of human connection. Sarah Matthews had always believed her life was following a predictable path. At 34, she had a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, and a charming colonial home in a quiet suburb of Portland. James had been her high school sweetheart, the only man she'd ever loved, and their 15 years of marriage had been mostly happy despite the usual struggles. Until 3 months ago, when James complained of headaches that wouldn't go away. Until 6 weeks ago, when the doctor said words like aggressive and inoperable. Until yesterday, when she stood beside a grave while her children, Emma, age 10, and Liam, age 7, clung to her hands, not fully comprehending that Daddy wasn't coming home. The funeral had been a blur. Sarah remembered fragments, her mother-in-law's wailing, the pastor's gentle words, the mountain of casserole dishes now filling her refrigerator. But mostly, she remembered Michael Reynolds standing awkwardly at the edge of the gathering, his own son Dylan, Liam's best friend, holding his hand. Michael, whose wife had left him 3 years ago for a yoga instructor in California. Michael, who had become James's closest friend when their boys started kindergarten together. Michael, who had been bringing her family dinner every Tuesday since James's diagnosis, quietly washing dishes afterward while she sat with her husband during his final weeks. I shouldn't, Michael said, still standing in her doorway, car keys dangling from his fingers. People will talk. Sarah almost laughed. People are already talking. The widow and the single dad. I don't care anymore. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. Dylan's at your sister's, right? Just, come in. Please. We can watch something mindless on TV. I can't face those empty rooms alone. Michael hesitated, then stepped inside. Just as friends, he said firmly. Of course, Sarah replied, though something in her chest ached with a need she couldn't name. Not desire, she was too hollowed out for that, but a desperate hunger for human connection that understood her pain. They settled on opposite ends of the couch, the TV murmuring in the background. Neither really watched it. How are Emma and Liam doing? Michael asked. Sarah stared at her hands. Emma understands more. She's not sleeping. Liam keeps asking when Daddy's coming home. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to do this, Michael. I don't know how to be both parents. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said gently. But I do, she whispered. Tomorrow they'll wake up, and they'll need breakfast and clean clothes and someone to tell them everything will be okay when I don't believe it myself. Michael shifted closer, not touching her but close enough that she could feel his warmth. I remember that feeling. After Carrie left, it was different, I know, but that overwhelming sense of, how do I do this alone, was crushing. How did you survive it? 1 day at a time. Some days, 1 hour at a time. He smiled sadly. And I had friends. James was, he was there for Dylan and me when we needed someone. The mention of James's name broke something in Sarah. The tears she'd been holding back all day, determined to be strong for the children, for the mourners, for everyone who needed her to keep functioning, finally spilled over. Michael didn't hesitate then. He moved beside her and put his arm around her shoulders as she sobbed against him, her grief pouring out in waves that left her gasping. I'm sorry, she managed between sobs. Don't apologize for grieving, he murmured into her hair. James deserves every tear. Sarah woke with a start, disoriented. She was still on the couch, a throw blanket tucked around her. Pale morning light filtered through the curtains. For one blessed moment, she forgot, then reality crashed back, the weight of it stealing her breath. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. She followed it to find Michael at the stove, making pancakes while Emma set the table and Liam arranged strawberries into smiley faces on small plates. "Mr. Reynolds says Daddy is watching us from heaven," Liam informed her solemnly. "And that he'd want us to eat breakfast even though our tummies feel funny." Sarah's eyes met Michael's over her son's head. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded, a simple acknowledgement of what they both knew: this morning was just the first of countless difficult mornings ahead. The weeks that followed established a fragile routine. Sarah returned to her job as an elementary school librarian, grateful for the principal's understanding when she occasionally needed to leave early. The children went back to school, where teachers kept a watchful eye on them and sent home regular notes about their progress. And Michael became their lifeline. It started small. He still brought dinner on Tuesdays, but now he stayed to eat with them. Dylan and Liam became inseparable, which meant playdates and shared activities. When Sarah's car wouldn't start, Michael drove her to work. When Emma needed help with a science project about rocks, Michael, a geologist, spent an entire Saturday helping her create a collection. "You don't have to do all this," Sarah told him one evening as they cleaned up after dinner, the children playing upstairs. "I know," he said simply. "I want to." "Why?" Michael was quiet for a long moment, drying a plate with careful attention. "Because James asked me to look out for you all. Before he died." Sarah set down the glass she was washing, her hands trembling. "He did?" Michael nodded, not meeting her eyes. "That last week in hospice, when you took the kids to get lunch. He made me promise." His voice roughened. "He said, they're going to need someone, Mike. Not right away, but someday. Promise me you'll be there." Sarah leaned against the counter, tears threatening again. "That sounds like James. Always planning ahead. I told him I would, but..." Michael finally looked at her. "I didn't expect to care this much. About all of you." The air between them changed, charged with something neither was ready to name. Sarah broke the moment, turning back to the sink. "Emma's birthday is next month. Would you and Dylan help me plan something? I don't think I can face it alone." "Of course," Michael said, relief evident in his voice at the safer topic. "Dylan's already talking about what to get her." Emma's 11th birthday arrived on a perfect October Saturday. Sarah had worried her daughter wouldn't want to celebrate so soon after losing her father, but Emma had insisted, saying, "Daddy would be mad if we didn't have cake." So they transformed the backyard with fairy lights and streamers. Michael arrived early to help set up, bringing a professional face painter friend who turned giggling children into butterflies and superheroes. Dylan proudly presented Emma with a friendship bracelet he'd made himself. As twilight fell and the party wound down, Sarah found herself standing beside the oak tree James had planted when they first bought the house. She pressed her palm against its rough bark, remembering how he'd said, "One day we'll sit in its shade when we're old and gray." "You okay?" Michael's voice came softly from behind her. "Just thinking about James," she admitted. "He should be here for this." Michael nodded, looking up at the branches silhouetted against the darkening sky. "He planted a good tree. Strong roots. Like what he left us with," Sarah said. "The kids are so much like him sometimes it takes my breath away." They stood in companionable silence until Emma called for them to come see her presents again. As they walked back toward the house, Michael's hand brushed against Sarah's, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. The holidays loomed like a mountain Sarah wasn't sure she could climb. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all without James. The thought made her physically ill. We could do something completely different, Michael suggested one afternoon as they watched their sons playing soccer in the park. Take the kids to a hotel with a pool for Thanksgiving. Order room service. Avoid the whole traditional thing. Sarah considered.